out?
Well, here's some names that have been mentioned. General Rodriguez, a 3-star, he runs the day-to-day war in Afghanistan. You probably get the least amount of learning curve problem with him since he's already in theater, already familiar with the whole operation. You have General Martin Dempsey at U.S. Training and Doctrine Command. He's a 4-star, distinguished himself in building the Iraqi security forces, has spent a lot of time getting Iraq to where it is today. You have Petraeus himself, who, he's spent a lot of time in war zones, but he is the go-to guy for counterinsurgency strategy. Really, Doug's right. This really is more reflective of his doctrine and strategy. If it was me, I would seriously consider feeling General Petraeus out about whether he'd be willing to go back into the theater.
And to you, Doug.
If I were President Obama, I would look elsewhere. I would try to find someone new. Doesn't necessarily have to be an Army officer. Can be a Marine, can be an Air Force officer, or even a Navy admiral. I mean, we've got to get out of this service-centric thinking. This is not a conventional war where we are fighting a conventional enemy. We're dealing with very different circumstances. I think Obama needs to pick his man, somebody we may not have heard of, somebody who has different thoughts, someone who can be trusted to provide an objective and honest assessment.
All right, to Oscar in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Good morning, you're on the air.
Hi there, and thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I might be off on this, but yesterday when I was listening to the reports about this this article, that the reporter actually asked the general about whether he can actually publish just let the article go ahead, and he got an answer, a yes as an answer, and I'm just wondering, that just brought up the question. Does the general have a different agenda in his mind? I'm wondering if he's positioning himself for a political career or some sort of other career, because it really, if he said yes to the publication of this article, he knows what the consequences were going to be. So that just brought up the question for me: what's the really real function of saying yes?
Sure. James.
I was struck by the same thing. It's not clear if the Rolling Stone sent them the quotes of only what General McCrystal said. He really didn't say anything that would cause you to worry. If they sent him the whole article, which I doubt, that's not something we would do. It's not something I think the Rolling Stone would do. And they read that, and they said, "Okay, we have no problem with this." Then that would be would have to say.
There was a quote about Holbrooke and his email.
That was the reporter saw an email come in from Holbrooke too,
right,
and reported that General McCrystal said, "Oh, I don't even want to take this. Do I have to take it?" I mean, it really wasn't a big deal. I mean, that to me was like the least of the problems here. I think the only comment that came out of his mouth was he felt betrayed by Eikenberry, and honestly, even the stuff about Obama feeling intimidated was an aide told me that's how the boss felt kind of stuff. So again, if they just sent McChrystal's guys his quotes, they probably would have no problem with it. If they sent them the whole story and they saw this and said, okay, thumbs up, yeah, that does lend to a theory that this was political career suicide, because you can't read that article and not know the stuff is going to start hitting the fan in a hurry when this is published.
James Kitfield, he's senior correspondent for National Journal magazine, and you're listening to the Diane Rehm Show. Now to Dayton, Ohio. Good morning, Darlene. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Diane, and I love your show.
Thank you.
Whenever I get a chance to listen to it. You seem to be very fair and balanced, so I wanted to add that. My comment was, we're looking at a president who pulled a general out of a war to discuss an article in a magazine. When you spread it all out on paper, this is the nutshell. If I believe the president should have said, was this said? Is this credible? I need to speak to these men because something is amiss. You have dedicated men that are risking their lives in a war zone that have been quoted when they were admittingly probably drunk. Now, I wouldn't put much merit on that. And again, it's a magazine article. It's a reporter. I would have talked to the men. But I certainly wouldn't have pulled a general out of a war zone. I would have maybe, I think Obama should have gone to them.
All right. Colonel Macgregor.
Well, again, we keep flinging this word war zone around as though we're engaged in World War II or something, or Korea. We're not. Again, you're dealing with very, very weak adversaries. You're not pulling someone out in the middle of a crisis. Nothing could be further from the truth. The generals risking their lives? No. They run around with huge security detachments. We've not had a single general officer casualty killed or wounded. This is a sergeant's war, a lieutenant's war, a soldier's war. They're the ones that go out and their lives are on the line. I think what we need to do is back away from this and understand that if you do what this person has just said, you look at this article and then you reflect on the numerous incidents involving McCrystal in the past. There is a very definite pattern. There is absolutely unambiguously serious friction, even hostility here. The president has to have the trust and confidence of his commanders. He obviously doesn't feel he's got that, and this is evidence that he doesn't.
The trust and confidence point is central, and I think Doug's exactly right that the president has every prerogative here to make whatever decision he may have made. And even though I've been a supporter of General McCrystal and still am, and hope that he is retained despite these news reports that suggest otherwise, I would acknowledge President Obama's fundamental right to make the call based on his own comfort level with his commander.
And I think it would have been useful to have him back, even if he wasn't in trouble, for this war council, because clearly we've stalled a bit in Afghanistan. So every reason to call him back for a discussion, even if this article didn't break. But I disagree with your listener. This is serious enough that I would call my field commander back and get his side of the story.
Now, what I want to ask you as a reporter, James, is whether in fact you had been in this situation and been given this kind of access, would you assume that everything was printable?
I have been in this situation a number of times, and no. And I still think we haven't heard the whole story of what were the media ground rules for this, because and we haven't even talked about this, but I will tell you there won't be no embeds in Afghanistan at higher headquarters I doubt for quite a while. This is probably set back the reporting of quite a ways, because there'll be the trust between the military and the media has just been shot out of the water. And I but that's the reporter's every right. If he was adhering to whatever agreement he had, it's his right to interpret and do. I'm not criticizing him, but I can assure you I've been in these situations, and I also will put things off to, hey, he's drunk. It's not germane to the general's feeling right now, whether he feels warm and fuzzy about Holbrooke or Eikenberry. What's he doing? Is that affecting how he runs this war? That to me would have been the more interesting question.
James Kitfield, he's senior correspondent for National Journal magazine. Michael O'Hanlon is at the Brookings Institution. He's author of Toughing It Out in Afghanistan. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, U.S. Army, retired. He's author of Warrior's Rage, The Great Tank Battle of 73 Easting. Thank you all so much. Obviously, this story continues. Thanks for listening, all. I'm Diane Rehm.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from Citgo, working for nearly a century to fuel the